Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Ann Reardon, and in this episode we are taking a look at milk.
A bottle of milk, thanks.
Low fat, no fat, full cream, high calcium, high protein soy, light skim, omega-3, high calcium with vitamin D and folate or extra dollop.
What type of milk should you be drinking that is best for your health, best for the environment? There are so many videos out there already that say stop drinking dairy, including this one from Food Theory, which is very, very similar in the look of the thumbnail and the content of the video to this one that was from Brew 2 years earlier. So today we're just going to take an unbiased look at milk and milk alternatives. I am not affiliated with any of these products, any of the companies, not affiliated with the dairy industry or the plant-based milk industry. I am just going to give you an unbiased look at both of them so you can make up your own mind. The first argument against milk is out of concern for the cows themselves. A little while ago there were some videos that came out with undercover footage from some of the dairy farms showing cows being really mistreated. I'm not going to show you the footage because it was quite disturbing, and then sick and injured cows not getting veterinary care, not being looked after. And as I said, it's quite disturbing, and I think everyone would agree that's not okay. It certainly would be illegal to treat animals like that here in Australia. The other thing that people are concerned about, which is not so much the cruelty of the treatment, but the way they're treated. So in order to produce lots of milk, the cows are impregnated every year. The calves are then taken away and fed separately rather than being able to feed off the mother cow. And people don't want that. They want the idea of the cow just being able to go out in the paddock and the calf being able to drink from the cow, and then we still get the milk. But in reality, if you did that, you would need 3 times the number of cows in a herd to get the same amount of milk as you get if you do it the way they currently do it. So that would obviously increase the cost of milk a lot, which is not practical in a lot of places. If you are someone who has plenty of money, there are dairies around that do ethical farming or farming where the cows are left with their calves. And so if you do a bit of Googling, you'll be able to find a dairy that does that. Or you could go to milk alternatives. I found this video very interesting. It said that if we all just asked for milk alternatives in our coffee instead of dairy milk, that it would stamp out the practices that we just talked about at farms.
But if you just add one extra word, you say, I'll have a soy latte, I'll have an oat latte, I'll have an almond latte, or one of the endless milks that now exist. All of that disappears. Your name is no longer attached to that immorality. It's gone. You're no longer responsible. It's as simple as that, right?
In reality, since 1975, the consumption of milk in the US, of liquid milk, has decreased 40% since 1975, and the consumption of milk alternatives has gone up. But as a whole, the dairy consumption has gone up. So that's mainly due to an increase in the amount of butter and cheese and yogurt that's being consumed. So if you decrease this but then you eat your dairy instead, that makes no difference to the cows. They still have to be milked to make those products. So if you are seriously concerned about the cows, you'd have to stop all dairy in your diet, not just switch the milks. And then the cows don't get to frolic in a paddock with their calves and live happily ever after. There would be no dairy cows then. They wouldn't be needed anymore, so they just wouldn't exist. So if that appeals to you, go for that. If you like the idea of them frolicking in the fields, go for a boutique dairy and Google search and find one of those near you that you can go and buy and pay the premium prices. So that's the cow's welfare. On to nutrition. Why do we even drink milk? Well, milk is currently one of the most widely produced foods in the world. It's used worldwide, and the reason why is because cows have a different digestive system to us. They can eat foods that we can't eat, so things like hay and grass, so something that's inedible to us, they can eat that and turn it into something edible, milk. And that's especially important in countries where they struggle to get enough food. Having milk as a food source can help decrease child mortality and increase longevity. So it's an important food source all around the world. Interestingly, if you are growing plants, for every 100 kilos of plant food grown, there is 37 kilos of byproducts, or waste, I guess you'd call it. That currently gets fed to cows because they can eat that. Same as the skins that are taken off the soybeans, that gets sent for livestock food. So a lot of the byproducts or waste from growing plants can then go over for animal food. And you can't just say, let's send all of that to humans to eat, because a lot of that's inedible. We don't have the same digestive system. We can't just eat what cows can eat. It doesn't work that way. The other thing a lot of people say is, well, maybe we should just swap the land that all the dairy cows are on and plant crops on it, and we should all just eat the plants. But the trouble with that is 2/3 of the land that the cows are on is not suitable for plant crops. It either doesn't have enough rain and water where it is, or it's too rocky or too hilly. It's not suitable for plant crops. So a lot of countries are just clearing more forest to make room for more plant crops, which is obviously not a good end result of what we want to do. So what if you're not actually that interested in the big picture and the whole world, and does everyone have enough food to eat? You just want to know for you, for yourself, should you be drinking dairy or should you be drinking dairy alternatives? Which one is better? Well, let's talk about that now. The reason that milk and dairy have their own food group is because there's something that they are a very good source of. That's the same with all the food groups. The reason it's separated is not just for fun, but each one of those provides a group of nutrients that it's very good at providing and the others are not so good at. So, dairy, obviously, most of you would know, provides calcium, which is important for your teeth and your bones. They're mainly made up of calcium, and you need that, especially when your bones are growing and they're getting stronger and thicker. We'll talk more about that later. So where can you get calcium from? Obviously, you can get it from cow's milk. 1 glass of cow's milk, this size, 250 mils, has in it 300 milligrams of calcium. Now, if we look at this video from Food Theory, they're telling us some other places that we can get that calcium from.
If the primary reason you're drinking milk is to get calcium and vitamin D so you can grow bigger and stronger, consider ways to get the same or better nutrition with less controversy and less money. Green vegetables like broccoli and kale, more calcium than milk. If you hate green things, just try eating some beans. You know, those fun little round guys that come in burritos and chili? More calcium than milk. Yep, I was surprised too.
They say in their video that broccoli and kale have more calcium than milk, and they show a picture of cabbage, not kale, so I guess we'll do kale and cabbage because I'm not sure which one they meant. And then they also had red kidney beans and said that they contain more calcium than milk as well. So let's do a comparison. To get that 300 milligrams of calcium that you get in 1 glass of milk, you would need to eat 222 grams of kale. And you might think, that's easy, I eat that much in a day. But I can guarantee if you put that in front of a child, that is a lot of kale to get them to eat, especially if they need more than 1 serve of dairy in a day. That's quite a lot. Now, technically, gram for gram, this has slightly more calcium, but to say that it has more calcium than milk is a bit deceptive because a serve of kale is not this much kale. Like, that is a lot. I've never been served that much kale, even if I've had a kale salad. So if you're looking at serve to serve, milk has a lot more calcium in it than kale. Next, they had broccoli. You would need to eat 960 grams or nearly a kilo of broccoli to get the same amount of calcium as you would in this glass of milk. I don't even know how they thought that broccoli had more calcium than milk because it doesn't even gram for gram. I'm not sure where they got that from. Then there's cabbage. You would need to eat 860 grams of cabbage. That's a lot of cabbage. And what about red kidney beans? You would need to eat 860 grams of red kidney beans to get the same amount of calcium as is in the glass of milk. And one thing they forgot to mention, or they didn't know, I'm not sure which, is that cabbage contains oxalates and red kidney beans contain phytates. Both of those things decrease the amount of calcium that you can absorb from that food into your body. So they bind to the calcium and so that it's not available for you to absorb. So in order to get the same amount of calcium actually absorbed and into your body as you would from this milk, you would need to actually have this much cabbage. Not finished yet. There we go. That's enough cabbage to get the same amount as in 1 glass of milk. So let's assume that they didn't mean cabbage, they just meant kale, and their editor got the picture wrong. We'll get rid of the cabbage. And let's just look at the red kidney beans. So to get the same amount of calcium absorbed into your body as would be absorbed from drinking this glass of milk, you're going to need to eat this many red kidney beans. That's a heavy plate. And these ones as well, I used them in the equation. So that's your serve of red kidney beans to get your calcium. So good luck getting your little kid to eat that many red kidney beans to get just one serve of calcium in their day. Now, it is really important that kids get enough. So that's why I'm showing you this visually. So you can go, oh, I can't just have some of this. Yes, broccoli has some calcium in, but it's not a great high source of calcium like milk is. So you have to have a lot of it to get enough calcium. What about your milk alternatives? Let's look at how they're made. They're all made in a very similar way. So let's look at almonds, for example. If you take your almonds and you add some water and then you leave that to soak overnight, then you drain it, add more water, put it in a blender and blitz it up, and then strain that through a fine cloth and squeeze all the liquid out. And this bit of the almond is usually just wasted. And at this point, it doesn't taste quite like milk, so most people will add some sweetener or some sugar to make it taste more like cow's milk. And in a commercial factory, they're usually also homogenized, which means making the fat globules in it so small that it stays spread throughout the milk instead of settling to the top, and pasteurized, which just means it's heated up to a temperature that will kill the bacteria, so it has a longer shelf life, the exact same way that normal dairy milk is homogenized and pasteurized as well. And then some of your specialty milks, like your barista milks, have additional things added like gum and emulsifiers. If you don't add them, it won't foam and won't froth when you put it under the steam. So you need to add those to make it behave like milk does if you want to use it for those uses. Naturally, these are not high in calcium, so legally they have to be fortified, which means calcium is added to them during the processing. So if you have a look at the nutritional information panel, you'll see each of these has at least 300 milligrams of calcium per glass. So you can choose to drink dairy milks or milk alternatives, and there is enough calcium in them for you. I don't care which one you have as far as calcium is concerned, doesn't matter. You can get it added in these ones because they're fortified, or you can get it naturally from these. That's up to you, your choice. But if you're making your own nut milks, particularly if you have kids at home, you need to figure out where they're going to get that calcium from. And that's really important because over our lifetime, our bone density and our bone mass increases. Obviously, as we're a child, our bones are growing longer, but even in your adult years, so right up until your mid-20s, your bone mass or your density of your bones is increasing. And we want to get it as high as we can, and the reason being is after that, it starts declining. And particularly for women, once you hit menopause, that decline is much faster. And there's been a lot of studies recently looking at if we increase the calcium to a very high amount, does it make that decline less so in older years? So no one is debating, do kids need calcium for their bones to grow? In fact, studies have shown that if you don't have enough calcium, you won't grow as tall as if you have enough calcium. And these studies up here, don't hear me wrong, they're not saying that older people don't need calcium at all. They're comparing people who are having, say, a glass and a half of milk a day to what if you had 4 serves worth of calcium a day, or we give you a big calcium supplement. Does that make any difference to that regression of your bone mass? And they've found it does make a difference, but it's not as huge as if they treat you with other medications. Okay, the next nutritional concern is saturated fat. Now, saturated fat is a type of fat that usually comes from animals, but some plant sources are saturated, like coconut fat is saturated fat. And saturated fat is of concern because it's been shown time and time and time again in studies that it's not good for your cardiovascular health or your heart health. Increases cholesterol, increases the risk of heart attacks and all of that sort of thing. This one I 100% agree with. So if you're going to choose dairy, choose low-fat dairy. If you chose a skim milk, for example, you would have less saturated fat in that than if you had one of these plant-based milks. But if you have full fat milk, you're going to be getting a lot more saturated fat. Next is allergies and intolerances. Now, if you are allergic to the protein in cow's milk, you will know about it. You won't need me to tell you about it. If you have cow's milk, then you will get hives and blisters and swelling of the face and vomiting, and sometimes in severe cases, swelling of the tongue and the throat, which is an anaphylactic reaction where you can't breathe and you need to go to hospital, or it can be life-threatening. In that case, you don't touch dairy at all, and you already know that. You should have an EpiPen and you shouldn't be going near it. In that case, one of the plant-based alternatives is for you. In the same way as if you're allergic to tree nuts, you can't go near the almond milks because the same thing will happen to you. Now, much more common than an allergy, an actual true allergy, is an intolerance, where someone can have some of it, but they can't have much of it, or they'll have a reaction. The most common one that people would associate with milk is called lactose intolerance. Now, lactose is the sugar in milk, and it's a disaccharide, meaning it's made up of two sugars joined together. And in that form, we can't digest it. We have to break it into the two separate ones so that we can absorb it. So what happens in order to break it in the two is we need an enzyme called lactase. The milk sugar's lactose, enzyme's called lactase. You break it in two, you absorb it, not a problem. Now, most people have that enzyme. They make it in their bodies when they're babies because they need to be able to absorb the breast milk that they're being fed, and it's usually not an issue. And then as they get older, the amount of that enzyme can decrease. There's only about a third of people in the world who that enzyme doesn't decrease. They still have it all the way into adulthood and can have milk no problem at all without causing any issues. If you don't have the enzyme, that sugar can't be broken down, which means you can't absorb it, which means it keeps going from your small intestine into your large intestine, and when it gets there, it's fermented by bacteria, which causes gas, which can cause bloating and diarrhea and that feeling of being unwell. So in that case, you've got a couple of choices. If you're lactose intolerant, you can choose one of the plant-based milks. You can choose to take a lactase tablet, which is a tablet that has the enzymes that break down that sugar whenever you eat dairy, or you can choose a lactose-free milk, which is just normal milk that has had the tablet added with the enzymes in, so they've already broken down the lactose for you. So it's already split into the two. So if you've never tasted it, it actually tastes slightly sweeter than normal milk, even though it's got the same amount of sugar in it. And that's because it's already been split up and broken down. Next is the environmental impact. Which one of these milks is best or worst for the environment? Interestingly, this is such a complicated equation to work out because there are so many factors that go into making a product right the way through from the beginning, from planting trees or buying your cows and feeding them up the number of years that they don't produce milk for, and all the different factors like how much you feed them, what type of food you feed them, and how much water do they need, and the processing plant, how much water is used just in washing equipment and washing containers, and how much electricity is used, how much electricity is used for refrigeration or refrigerated trucks, and how many fumes are put out from the tractors that are working on the farm. Like, there are so many factors that go into this equation that I'm 100% convinced you could manipulate that data to make either one of them look better. In fact, in some articles that I read that were trying to promote almond milk or one of the plant milks, said that dairy milk uses 5 times the amount of water to make and 5 times the amount of emissions. But then when I actually read research studies that went to 180 different dairy farms ranging from 5 cows up to 520 and looked at it, it was nowhere near that amount. In fact, some of them were lower than the plant milk said that they used to make. So honestly, I think that it's a really complicated equation. And as I said, you can actually find dairies that are very efficient and have a low environmental impact, and you can probably vice versa find processing plants for these that are not very efficient and have a bigger environmental impact. So there's not really one that I can pull out for you and quite confidently say is better for the environment. But what I can tell you is something that makes a huge difference is the packaging that you buy your milk in. If you buy it in these Tetra Paks, it has a lot less of an environmental impact than if you buy it in the PET bottles that haven't been made from recycled PET. If it's been made from recycled PET, it has a lesser impact, but not as low as your Tetra Paks. So if possible, if you can make a choice about the packaging that it comes in, then that could be making a good environmental impact. So there you go. I hope that helps. It's an unbiased look at all the different milks, and you can make your own decision about which one you choose. With thanks to my patrons for making this video possible, here is a list of legends. And if you liked this video, make sure you let the algorithm know that you did by liking, commenting, sharing, and watching more videos. Make it a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.